Matt, why is planning for long-term healthcare so damn important?
It's all about family. And I hate to be just very simple, but it is really simple. And that's why I got into this industry because I saw the impact long-term care had on my family. And we often think about long-term care planning as protecting money. Not that money's not important. Money obviously makes the world go round.
Of course.
But the number one thing is family because everything impacts the family. I'm sure perhaps you and many people who are listening and watching this show either have a first degree or second degree experience with someone needing help with everyday living activities, usually because of aging and the impact of aging or chronic illnesses, but not always. And that impact on the family, whether it be an older spouse, the adult children, in laws, extension, grandchildren, is really hard to explain unless you have gone through it, and the people who've gone through it are shaking their heads. I remember
Mhm.
helping mom, I remember helping dad, I remember not taking vacations, I remember having to not take that promotion at work, and we can go on and on and on, but the impact is family, and I don't care if you're sitting there with, $20 million in the bank or 20,000. Everyone has family, and everyone loves at least one person. I would think at least one person.
Sometimes just the
So
one.
maybe love is a strong word. Maybe kind of and it's that simple. It's about family. Everything's about family. And unfortunately, professionals, people who are financial advisors, for example, what do they think about? They're not thinking about family. They're thinking about money. And the focus
Right.
has to be family first.
Okay. So it's a little bit selfish to let your health decline and then make your family members have to pay to take care of you at end stages of life. Is that maybe where we're
Yeah,
going
but
with
that's
this?
not exactly what happens, Cameron.
Okay.
What
Tell me more.
happens
Tell me more.
first is they're gonna try to be your caregiver. They're not gonna pay for your care. They probably
Got
can't
it.
afford to pay for your caregiver. They're going to
Okay.
be your caregiver, and they're gonna have to juggle the responsibility of caregiving, or if money's involved, paying and managing caregiver, along with their other responsibilities. They have careers, they have their own families, they have responsibilities, they have a life. All of us have a life to some degree, and it's not selfish to be concerned about our families' lives and how it will impact them. If you're the care recipient, someone's going to take care of you one way or the other. It might
Right.
be the government through Medicaid. It might be your family. It might be your back pocket, maybe a combination of things. You're going to get care. Quality of care. Okay, we can debate that. You're going to get care. It's that crisis, that family crisis that really impacts everybody.
Okay. I get you. I get you. So we're moving into a society that has a larger elderly population and a smaller young population. I had a lady on recently who talked about the fertility crisis that we're going through.
Yes?
What's the scholarship saying about obviously what you're talking about, that long term healthcare burden? What's that going to look like when everybody is now older and needing to be the recipient?
Yeah, the numbers don't work.
Okay.
We are living in an aging society. We're not having as many kids as we used to, or we are delaying having children or a combination thereof. 100 years ago, you had 5, 6 kids. Many women did not work outside the home. I'm not saying that was good or bad or indifferent. It was the way it was. Today, for the most part, women work outside the home. They're going to college, they have careers, they get married at later ages, and then they delay having children. The whole idea that your kids are going to take care of you just isn't realistic. And because of longevity, aging is the number one reason, that and the advances in medical science. Aging is the number one reason people need long term health care. You don't have to be sick to need long term care. You can be just old and frail. So we're all living a long time. There's not enough young people to either be professional caregivers, much less family caregivers. And without planning, you're just having a crisis. And most families are completely unprepared. And I'm not talking about buying insurance, just no one's had the conversation.
Mm.
There has been no conversation in most families about what happens when mom and dad gets older. And mom and dad don't want to have that conversation. They'd almost rather talk about their doom. But before death comes long term care.
When are we supposed to start having that conversation?
Oh, I would start having that conversation as soon as your adult children are old enough to understand. The youngest client I had go on claim was 27. So there are people that need long term care sooner than later. And that is primarily because it's very difficult to die, which is normally a good thing.
That's a fun way to say
And
it.
but if you don't die and you don't recover, you can need long term extended care well before you're 87. So
Mhm.
having that conversation that, hey, this is how we set up our future or current retirement. We're thinking of maybe downsizing the house in a few years. We're thinking of maybe moving to Sarasota or to this place or that place, or have that conversation. And by the way, if we need care, you know what? We want to sell the house and move into assisted living. There's some really nice assisted living facilities. Or, hey, I'm not leaving this house no matter what.
Right.
But you have to talk. And no one has had that and when I say no one, a vast majority of people have not had that conversation.
Yeah,
As
we as we put all of our reactionary thoughts after whatever event led to the reaction, right? And we treat health as a reaction, not as pre-planning or preventative maintenance in any way, shape, or form. If you just look at, you only ever go to the doctor when something has happened and you need to have it remedied, right? And all of our medical diagnosis are thing has occurred, here's how you resolve it. So what are we like the conversation you're talking about is the parents telling the children, be on the lookout, we're about to start falling apart. But couldn't we be having conversations with our younger folks more about, or I guess in addition, right? Making sure that they start taking care of themselves earlier on. Shouldn't we be taking care of ourselves from the start rather than just
oh, well,
talking
we need to
about,
be, yes, absolutely. We need to be proactive
okay,
about our health. We need to be proactive about retirement planning. It's
uh-huh.
amazing to me how many people start thinking about retirement, on their 55th birthday or their 60th birthday. Excuse me.
Wow,
I remember, my first retirement account, I was 20 years old. I put a couple bucks in it, but nonetheless, we need to prepare, and we don't like to prepare because that forces us to often think of things that are not very pleasant, but
okay.
it's the way you focus it. I think it is really pleasant to know that I'm prepared for this. I'm going to have enough money in retirement so I can enjoy my retirement. I don't have to set money aside to pay for maybe long-term care because I haven't planned. I can spend that money and take that vacation and take that cruise and maybe set up that college fund for my grandkid or whatever it is that you want. All it takes is to prepare. But the problem is we like to spend money on
Hmm.
toys, on things that we want now. Think of this device. When I graduated high school, this did not exist. this expense was not an expense.
Right.
But I don't know, I spent a lot of money on this, okay, and the service, and, of course, I have to have the latest iPhone, so and we make those decisions. We have to have a brand new car, we have to make sure that we take this vacation or that vacation, and we're reacting to things that we want now. Planning for something in the future? When I graduated college, I had no debt. Why? Well, I worked in high school. I worked throughout college. Mom and dad helped a little bit. I walked out of school with 0 debt. Now, it's hard to not listen to the radio, watch TV, or pick up a well, no one picks up a newspaper anymore, but see something online about, the college debt crisis, right? We want to
Mhm.
forgive all these loans, and of course, you got to pay for that basket weaving degree that we got. Okay, you know, and obviously there we don't want to totally get into something like that, but there is realistic reasons to go into debt for college. If you're going to become a doctor, a lawyer, what have you, that takes extensive schooling, that costs money, and even working isn't going to always pay for it. But there's way too many people in recent generations that just don't prepare for anything. Oh, the money's flowing. I'm going to get this loan and I'm going to pay a little bit off and then hopefully maybe they'll forgive it. Okay. We have to live in the real world, and aging is a real thing, and the impact of aging won't go away. And it takes conversation, it takes preparation, and it takes being real. Most people are in denial.
I think I caught a small theme in there when you're talking about the consumerism type stuff. You started mentioning debt a few different ways, student loan debt, auto debt, even credit card debt to buy your cell phone, etc. I mean, I don't know anybody who pays cash for their cell phones nowadays. Everybody gets the Apple card or the Verizon card or whatever it is. And we have now a system of our world, which, it's been around for several decades, but it's way the norm now of using credit, right? You never pay full price for anything. And it makes it really easy to get the thing now and worry about it later. So now every aspect of our life is get the thing now, worry about it later. I mean, I can't I can't really think of anything other than maybe going to college or going to school where you don't get the thing up front and do the work for it later, right? So when we have that as our cultural norm these days, it's obvious that the idea of taking care of your body or remedying an illness that you currently already have, we automatically think that it's after the fact because everything we do is after the fact. You fix it after the fact. You pay for it after the fact. You deal with it after the fact. So we have to reframe our thinking to begin with? Because how are you going to pitch to someone in their early 20s, get your shit together now because it's going to be a problem later when our entire worldview is, yeah, we'll deal with it later,
Absolutely. And you add to it something that most of us are in denial of.
which is
Most people, majority of people, don't think it's going to happen. I'm healthy. I'm never going to need long term care. You know, it's never happened in my family. And then you start getting into asking questions and asking follow up questions and digging. And then it did
absolutely.
happen to your family. Do you think that if you didn't go to your mom's house every day at 4 o'clock, that she would be okay? Well, no, we had to do that because she could. Well, that's long term care. And do you know how many people that I talk to that haven't been for a regular checkup and lab work in years? Years. It absolutely amazes me. They take better care of their car than they do of themselves. I
You're
get my
talking
oil
about
changed.
me.
Oh, yeah, I got my BMW, my Audi, my whatever. Okay.
You are absolutely talking about me. I spent my entire late teens, early 20s. I was changing my oil every 3,000 miles. I was washing my car top to bottom every Sunday, never once went to the doctor. When I was 25, I got diagnosed with a chronic illness. Now I go to the doctor 4 times a year. Before that, not once. And guess
No,
who
not
hasn't washed
once.
his car since I got diagnosed? The car's not important anymore.
You know, and we're a little bit better today than we were when I first started doing this in the late 90s. I was still
Yeah.
dealing with the end of the World War II generation and the Korea War generation and the beginning of the Vietnam generation guys. And often, when's the last time you've been to the doctor, Fred? When I got, my physical going out of the army. Fred, you're 67 years old. You haven't been to the doctor since you were 20? Oh, 22 when I got out of the army. Okay. Well, I feel great, man. Really? You know, if there is one thing, and yes, planning for long term care, and many people need long term care insurance. But aside from that, if there's one thing that someone can pick up on our conversation is go to the doctor at least once a year. You should be doing that, well, definitely by the time you're 30, but you know what? You probably should be doing it from the day you get out of college. Go to the checkup. Even if the doctor says, "What are you here for?" Just do a normal lab. Most health insurance pays for it. It's a wellness check.
Hmm.
And do that because because things are going to happen. Early detection of even fairly benign things. Okay. People think no big deal with high blood pressure. Unfortunately, if you live 30 years with high blood pressure before it gets diagnosed, the impact on like your kidneys, for example, can be tremendous. Just go to the doctor once a year. When you're 50, now you're going to start adding more testing. Now you get that colonoscopy. It's not that
Hmm.
bad.
It's not.
Women need to get their bone density tests. And there's all that female stuff that women need to get done. I've known way too many women that don't even go to the OB-GYN. You got to do these things. Just like you take care of your car or you take care of your clothes, the most important thing you have is yourself. And we went back to family when we first started talking. If you don't take care of yourself, think of how that is going to impact the rest of your family.
Right.
You know, there's a TV and radio commercial going on, and I won't mention who it's for. The whole guy says, my dad was a really healthy guy, and 55, he had a stroke and died. But he left us with life insurance. Terrible story. Okay, yeah, life insurance is important, especially if you have kids, blah, 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 blah. But there's probably more to that story. Okay, there are things that just happen even if you go to the doctor all the time. But we have to be realistic. We have to take care of ourselves, the impact it has on our families, and not be in denial of the way life works. It doesn't always go exactly as planned. I never planned to be in the long-term care industry. That's not what I went to college for. But hey, what have I been doing since 1998? And the impact I've had on thousands of people during that time. If your health goes down, you're impacting your spouse, your children, your grandchildren, your job. You own a business and you're not taking care of yourself. You've got employees. I mean, we can go on and on and on. But the most important person is you. And if you aren't there operating at full efficiency, it has a snowball effect. And it's that simple to just Be real. There's no better way to just be real. It's life. There's things we can do to prepare. You don't know the end result, but we hopefully will have a long, happy journey on the way there.
Okay. So actually, I might have a good example
Okay.
of why working on your health earlier in life helps with your long-term care planning, etc. Thinking long-term is the better idea. And this goes back to what you were talking about the high blood pressure affecting kidney function. So I actually learned maybe 3 years ago when I had a cat pass away, unfortunately, that blood pressure has the effect on the kidneys because the higher the blood pressure, the more volume is trying to be passed through the same size tubes of the kidneys, for lack of a better way of describing that. So we had a cat with a thyroid issue, and the thyroid created, I guess, low blood pressure, which made it seem like the kidney was fine because there wasn't enough blood going through. So a particular blood test showed up as normal. When we treated the thyroid, it got the blood pressure back to normal, which then signaled the failing kidney. But also, in the very, very interesting way, when the thyroid condition went untreated, what was wrong with the kidney wasn't causing terminal damage. But the moment we treated the thyroid, what was wrong with the kidney suddenly caused terminal damage. So there's so many different points of the body that are doing different things and have impacts on each other. And these are like build up type of issues. So the blood pressure, high blood pressure isn't always related to just being angry, because sometimes that's what we think. You imagine your grandpa or your uncle or your father who's a little overweight and always "Grr," told me that the way high blood pressure works and the way it kills you in the end is just by adding little thin layers of plaque over and over and over to your veins until eventually the blood can't get through the tiny pinhole. And that's when you have a stroke and die. So if you take blood pressure meds while you're in law school, when you're being stressed, because you have to go through that stress to get through law school, you take the blood pressure meds, it relaxes your veins and prevents some of that buildup and just makes it a little easier so you don't die when you're 50 from some stuff you did to yourself when you were in your 20s. And it's crazy to me that something you do in your 20s can have that type of impact when you're 50. And you're no longer stressed when you're 50. But being stressed when you were 20 killed you when you were 50. These different ways that the body takes forever to do the damage. And also, you could have reversed it or prevented it the entire time by taking one or two simple actions. That's insane to me. And it's insane to me that we're not being taught that. It's insane to me that it's not common knowledge. I think it is established, known knowledge in the medical community, but how come the average 24-year-old has no idea that that's how blood pressure works?
Like, go back to when you were in 20, you were in your 20s and what was important to you, and you had no fear. Most people at a young age have no fear. That's why you drive a little bit faster, burn
Right?
the candle on both ends of the candle you're burning, you don't get enough sleep. Maybe you drink a little bit too much. You're having fun, you're working hard, you're whatever it is, okay? Because you feel good, you're young, right? But going back to the car analogy and getting the oil changed, your body is kind of a machine, okay? We call cars computers with wheels. In many ways, the body's a computer up here, and we've got the mechanics here, and you got to take care of it. And it's not, and I'm not talking about diet and don't, eat red meat and all those things, which could be important. Just do the basics, just the basics. Get your blood work, get your regular checkup, blood pressure, listen to your heart, all that kind of fun stuff. As you start getting older, don't be as lazy. So I work from home. Never worked at home before. All of a sudden, I'm doing this. I'm working at home. And I learned very quickly that I can't be sitting all day. Okay. When I worked in radio, I worked at a radio studio. I'm up walking around, standing, okay, walking around. There would things to do. Now I'm doing this and I'm sitting in an office chair at home with the
Right.
refrigerator around the corner. Not good. Okay.
Okay.
So I quickly learned that I had to stay active. So one of the things I did is you've probably seen those one of those contraptions where you can, put your computer and move it up into a standing position.
Yes.
And so when I run appointments with clients, I do it standing. And when I'm talking to someone on the phone, I'm walking and talking. I put in 10,000 steps a day between walking the dogs and just walking and talking and at home all day, staying active. As soon as I started doing that, I felt much better. And, sometimes if you work in an office, you're stuck. You can't do that. But there are ways you get breaks, go up and down the stairs at the office building that you're at. If you're going up to get a coffee or a diet pop, go to another floor to get it. You
Okay.
know,
Interesting.
don't make it so easy. Keep active. And if you want to work out and all that kind of stuff, fine. Everyone is different, but just staying active and doing what I think common sense thing will pay off years down the road. But the problem with long-term care is, again, if you live, you're not dying. And aging is related to long-term care, and you can be healthy and still need long-term care because of frailty. So it's kind of a double-edged sword too. The better you take care of yourself, at some point you're going to need help with activities of daily living or unfortunately supervision due to a cognitive impairment. Aging again is the number one reason you need long-term care. But if you can avoid some of the chronic illness, you can get to a much older age with a better quality of life. And when you do need help with activities of daily living and you have access to quality care, you can still have a good quality life, maybe a little bit different. Now, obviously, if you have severe dementia or a massive stroke, that's a different story. But my mom, even though she needed help in and out of the bathroom and the toilet and all that kind of stuff, she still had a good quality of life. She had access to quality care. Fortunately, it came from savings and investments and
Mhm.
my dad's pension. But nonetheless, her life did not end. And I think that's one of the reasons why people are in denial. They don't want to think about long term care because they think of nursing homes. Who wants to be in a nursing home? Nobody.
For sure.
Guess what? Most long term care in the United States and globally is not delivered in a nursing home. It's delivered at home, adult daycare, and assisted living. There are so many better choices today than there were just 40 years ago. It's costly. It takes money to pay for it, but there are lots of choices that you can maintain a good quality life, even in a situation where you need help with activities of daily living.
Yeah. And the cost is the biggest problem in this whole thing, I think. Because if we were just helping mom get up and down here and there, that'd be one thing. But when you have to pay for the medications, you have to pay for the actual nurses to show up, even if you do an in home care or something like that. The cost is pretty insane. And I heard you mention long term care insurance earlier, which I didn't even really know was a thing. I guess all medical insurance is medical insurance. I'm not really sure. But, and then again, when we're talking about an aging population, I mean, who's going to foot the bill?
Well, the thing is, health insurance, and then once you're 65, Medicare and whatever Medicare supplement you'll have,
Mhm.
does not pay for long term care. It'll pay for
Really?
a limited amount of short term skilled care, basically, recovery, rehab, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So if you don't have long term care insurance, there are only three choices. A family member is going to take care of you, You're going to pay for a caregiver yourself or Medicaid, which is the medical welfare program, but you have to have limited financial resources. You can't give away your money to qualify for Medicaid. It has to be spent down. And they have a 5-year look back rule. So you can't say, okay, let's give all my money to my kids and say I'm poor. No, does not work that way. So it goes back to planning. A lot of people don't know long term care insurance exists, or what they do know of it is wrong because they go online and they read the wrong thing that's not true. Imagine that there's something on the internet not true, but there is. And then we go back to that crisis. And that's why being able to plan and prepare is so important because as you know, long-term care costs are expensive. There's a cost of care calculator on a website, LTC News, ltcnews.com. And you can put in a zip code and see the cost of home care and assisted living, adult daycare, memory care, nursing home, anywhere in the United States just by zip code. A nursing home, and again, most care is not in a nursing home, but a nursing home is the most expensive. In many places in the country, that's over $100,000 a year.
Yikes.
Now, you could be very well to do, and $100,000 a year is going to hurt. Assisted living will be a little bit less. Obviously, home care, unless it's 24/7, home care is going to be less. If you live in the Northeast or the far Northwest, that's going to cost more than most places in the South, for example. So, cost of care varies on the type of care and location. And so, you should be aware of this before that crisis hits. Again,
Mhm.
most people are not. There's some place in their head that they know this, but it's locked away. There's better things to think about in their mind.
Yeah. We're told, diet, exercise. Those are your surefire ways to age gracefully, etc. But then there's confusion or argument over what diet and what exercise. And I remember when I first started trying to learn more about these things, hearing, you got the paleo diet, you got the keto diet, you got the Mediterranean diet, you got the carnivore diet, my favorite. There's so many different diets, and every single one of them seems to be pitched as the one that's gonna, like, solve all of your problems, and, of course, they got data behind it. Mediterranean diet has the most blue zone people eating it, sure, right? Paleo diet is the most closely linked to your ancestors, and that must be good for us, right? All these other different ways of pitching it, and that makes sense, but how are you supposed to really figure out the right one? And then I think it was last year, all of the podcasters that do health content suddenly started saying that just increasing your protein is all you need. And they were all like, screw keto, screw paleo, screw it all. Just eat slightly more protein. And I'm like, well, hang on now. Because what if I'm eating a ton of protein and also like, okay, you can get a lot of protein through hamburgers, is what I'm saying. And I don't think that's a healthy diet. That is mostly what I would like to eat, but that doesn't mean it's a healthy diet. So I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to even pick the right thing to do.
Well, and the thing is, the chemistry is different with every human being.
Mhm.
You can take someone, and I've talked to the people that they eat terribly. They don't exercise. They smoke. They drink a little bit too much.
Huh?
They have no health problems. Someone
Yes.
else does everything right. Everything right. And they have health problems. So I kind of think, and everything that I've read, if you read between the lines, is just use common sense. Anything to an extreme is probably not good. Yes, I like cheeseburgers. Do I eat cheeseburgers every day? No. You know,
The sad life.
I wish I could. I don't. Um, oh, don't eat sweets. Well, yeah, is having a piece of cake once a month going to be a problem? And we are and maybe we already always had been in the past, and I just didn't realize it, but we tend to like fads and then do things to the extreme. "Well, I need to lose weight, so I need a diet. If I eat nothing but kale, I'm gonna do this." You know,
Concept.
that's not good. You're better to be 20 pounds overweight and maintain that over the course of your lifetime than the yo-yo. I've had dozens of doctors tell me that. Yo-yo weight is not a good on your system. No, that doesn't mean you should be 300 pounds at 5'10" and maintain that your entire life. I'm not saying that, but a yo-yo diet's not good. We go to extremes with so much in our society when I think the smartest way to go about things is just common sense. Does it seem right to just only do this? Doesn't pass the smell test. Doesn't pass the smell test.
I think I'm thinking about that idea of okay, so you're a guy who just switches to only eating kale to try to diet or whatever. That's a problem because first and foremost, gross, but also you're going to be missing a whole lot of other nutrition, a lot of different
Right.
other micronutrients and stuff that you're supposed to get. And then you have the people who like only eat fast food all the time. Well, you're going to be missing certain vitamins and minerals through that thing. But if you get the people who are a little more laissez-faire, you talked about the guys who they drink, they smoke, they do this, they do that, but they're just kind of like doing a little bit of everything. Well, they just got a huge variety of things that they can take in and do. And so now you're in a position where you're getting the little bits and pieces you get all the time. And when you really think about, well, no, that's wrong. I've started learning about our ancestors a little bit more and what their actual nutrition and lifestyle and different things were like. And so we think of, I don't know, everything prior to like 1945 being this real like oatmeal and unseasoned chicken breast life, but that's not even a little bit. There's a YouTube channel you can watch where they pretend it's 1850 and they just make food. That's what this channel's entire thing is. They make food the way they made it then. I'll be damned if they didn't have a spice cabinet, if they weren't eating 4 different types of meat, they were changing up the vegetables based on season, they talked about trading with nearby partners. I learned about when I went to London earlier this year for my sister's wedding, I started learning about London a little bit more, found out that the idea of like a supermarket and unions and different things like that all stemmed from the trade that would go in and out of London. So then that led me down to learn about how the neighborhoods looked. And I'm learning about medieval London, like the 1200s, 1300s, 1400s. And they have these vibrant, vital neighborhoods where they have, basically like their versions of homeowners associations, the guilds, trade unions, and different things like that. Where I'm like, oh, wow, I 100% thought everybody wore tunics and ate oatmeal prior to like 100 years ago. And then even if you go back to the Aztecs and the Egyptians and all these other people, you realize just exactly how like vibrant and like varied their life and livelihoods were and how much actual trade across the world was actually occurring back then. And it's insane. So when you start to think about any one thing being what you're supposed to do, even if you consider what was the word I said earlier, like your ancestral diet or whatever, that's supposed to be based on the fact, like, I have a lot of Scottish and, Northern English ancestry based on all the
Right.
blood test things you do. So I'm
Right.
supposed to eat nothing but lamb and potatoes because that's all they grow there, right? Well, that's garbage, and that's not how it works because it turns out when I eat lamb and potatoes, which again is my favorite, so there must be something to it, I end up getting sick, right? Because I'm missing other stuff. And then I visited northwestern England earlier this year. I didn't see anybody eating lamb and potatoes. They were eating Indian food mostly, to
Okay,
be
there you
honest.
go.
So I don't know. I think maybe variety is the spice of life thing starts to become important. And then maybe that's
And again, that gets back to the whole idea, don't go to the extreme.
yeah.
I run into a lot of varied people in helping them with long-term care planning, and I get a lot of these folks that, very athletic, they're working out, they're doing the marathons and all that, and you start quizzing them about their health, and they got arthritis, they got
Mm.
joint issues, they had a knee replacement, What do? They did now they may have enjoyed doing it, and that's a different reason to be doing it if you enjoy it.
Right.
But if they were doing it to be healthy, in which in many cases is the case, what do they just do? They just wrote a prescription for needing help with activities of daily living by the time they're in their 70s because
Hmm.
they just wore down all their joints. And they were probably ignoring their body and the signs of their body saying, "Hey, time out. That couch looks pretty good."
Uh-huh.
You know, you know, but that's I think a lot of this is human nature. Some of it is now there is so much media influence. You can't get away from media because we're so connected to electronic devices. So I think that has an influence. Oh, that looks fun. I'll do this. And then that's all you do. I think you have to take that deep breath and pace yourself, not do things in extreme. Don't sit and worry. You know, some people equate planning with worrying. No,
Uh-huh.
planning actually may be a creation of less worry down the road. Uh, and kind of relax yourself and go with the flow. That's not a reason to ignore the obvious, and it's not an excuse to not plan. Tend to just think for today and worry about tomorrow when it gets there. And when I deal with families who are now in crisis because a loved one now has a need for full time care, and there's been no conversation, there's been no plan. They don't know what to do. By the time they get to me, it's too late to plan. So I end up offering free advice and saying, "Hey, do this, this, and this." And now they're working from point of view where they have to deal with the crisis at hand and they're trying to dig themselves out of it. That's not a way to put your family. It's not a as a family member, not it's not fair to them. Um, And again, it's kind of common sense. We're all going to get old. Aging wins every time.
Mm-hmm.
Every time aging wins. One time that aging is not won. So knowing that is not a negative thing. It's just, okay, how do we better prepare for the consequences of aging? To take that burden, the physical, emotional, and financial burden of aging and chronic illness that happens as we get older, hopefully older as opposed to sooner, and long-term care. There are easy ways to do it. You don't have to spend a lot of money to do it. A basic conversation is better than doing absolutely nothing. Yet, a lot of people, we record this a couple weeks after Thanksgiving, and that would have been a wonderful time for a lot of families who are now together to have a conversation. Everyone's there. Even discussing family health history. There's a lot of people that are very closed mouth about their personal health with their own family. It's almost like they're embarrassed about it. But every family should know that the family health history because what happens when you go to the doctor, hopefully is preventative as opposed to dealing with a crisis. Tell us about the family history. Did any of your parents have XYZ? Well, I don't know. That's useful information. If you know that cardiac issues run in your family and you know that, do you think you can better prepare and adjust? Absolutely. But why don't we talk about it?
Good
One of the things when I talk
question.
to clients is, "Tell me about your family history." Well, I don't really know. No excuse. No excuse at all.
Hmm. How do you okay, this sounds like a conversation coming from children to parent, right? Because the children wanna know the parent's history. How do
Well,
you
and
how do you
grandparents and great-grandparents, aunts,
yes.
uncles. Yeah.
how do you broker that conversation over the Thanksgiving table, knowing how Americans are going to immediately react to that in,
Oh,
in a negative way?
I think the way to do it is try to make it fun. Okay. Hey, this
Okay.
Thanksgiving, we're going to talk about the family. Everything you know about everyone, bring it to the table. And we're going to talk about the family. Okay. Okay, you don't have to talk all about the negative, but we should embrace the past. I
Hmm.
love history. Okay. I think people who ignore history repeat the repeat the mistakes of history.
Yes.
History can be fun. It can be exciting. And when you're talking about family history, that is what makes you who you are today. Okay. So my last name is McCann. Okay. Fine. I'm Irish, right? Found out that I'm half Irish and mostly half Irish and half Italian, but I got
Mhm.
some Egyptian, got a little bit of
Exotic.
German. Okay. And a little bit of Native American. Wow. Now that leads to a whole lot of questions, you know, unfortunately, most of which I may never find out the answers to. But wouldn't have been nice if somewhere along the line that someone would have said, "Yeah, your great uncle was in World War One, and he was stationed in Egypt, and they had a baby, and whatever it was." So it doesn't always have to be bad. Obviously, health can be not so nice, but there's probably fun things that you can learn from family history, and that's how I would set it up. And I actually, until this moment, never thought about that, and I may recommend it for next year because you're going to have fun with it. And as Americans, we have to have fun with everything, right? Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. So if we have a bad topic to discuss, wrap it around fun. It's just like when I talk to people about long-term care insurance, I try to have fun because it's a whole lot better conversation for an hour if you kinda lighten up, right? And that's how I would go about it. Next year, or whatever you're listening to this, because obviously this will live for, a million years. The next big holiday that family's gonna be around, tell everyone, "Hey, this is what we're gonna do." Get the stories about aunts, uncles, and grandparents and great-grandparents and anything that you've learned. We're gonna talk about it at the table, knowing that you're going to try to direct some of this to useful stuff, not just fun stuff, but that's how you gather information. And then someone, ideally someone responsible, needs to keep record of it and then share it with the group. So when you go to the doctor and the doctor says, "Any family history of stroke?" Well, matter of fact, yeah. Boom, 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 boom. Is that useful for the doctor? Yes. Is it useful for you? Absolutely. Talk about it. Talk about it. Yeah. So you're 20 some years old. You got your job. You got your health insurance. You're not using it. Okay. Because I'm healthy. Why would I go to the doctor? So I think there's a couple things. Obviously, maintaining your body by getting the regular oil change. And in this case, going to the doctor, getting your blood pressure checked, your blood work, that sort of thing. That should be a no brainer. People think, oh, I'm going to the doctor, they're going to discover something. No, there's not a correlation of going to the doctor and then being sick. Zero correlation. People that never go to the doctor who finally go to the doctor, yeah, because you haven't been to the doctor in the last 40 years. So start that habit and start that habit early. And then the second thing is too many of us sit on our butts. And I'm not talking about exercise. Yes, exercise can be good, But there's exercise and there's just being active. And what do I mean by being active? Find something that gets off your butt that you can do easily. Okay. For some people, it might be walking the dog. Well, I'll get a dog and I'll be forced to walk the dog 4 times a day. Okay. I now work at home. How can I remain active while working at home? Well, I found my solution to that. And then I test myself with my iWatch here. It clocks all my steps. Okay, now I'm proving that I'm actually doing it. I think being balanced in lifestyle. That doesn't mean that you never try anything extreme. I mean, to me, jumping out of a airplane, a perfectly good one, is not something I probably would do. But for other people, they want to do that. Okay, fine. You can take some risks. You don't want to be completely boring. But if you generally keep a balanced lifestyle, whether it's what you're eating, your activity, your vices, you know, all those things, just don't go to the extreme. And that will get you to a point where you're going to have overall better health and well being as you get to an older age. And the other part was planning. The problem with doing all that is you're going to live a long time. Problem with medical science is you're not going to die as quickly as they used to. Okay. You're going to survive. And planning for long term care should be part of retirement planning. And for some people, that would be long term care insurance. Not for everyone. That depends on how much you have. Okay. If you're putting barely put two nickels together, should you buy long term care insurance? No, you could easily qualify for Medicaid. That doesn't mean you don't plan for long term care by having conversations and telling your family your desires and thinking about, maybe having a house with tons of stairs is not a good idea as you approach old age. Okay. You don't have to have money for simple things like that. But if you got savings, you got your 401k, your IRA, you're saving for your future retirement, you probably need long term care insurance. And you don't need to spend a ton of money on it. There's way too many financial advisors that show these huge policies, and what are they thinking? Well, I know what they're thinking. They're thinking of their commission, and there's nothing wrong with commission. We all have to be paid for our work somehow. But if you talk to an actual long-term care specialist, they can match you, your age, your health, and your family history with something that is affordable, that gives you peace of mind, that will help you prepare. It's not that difficult. It's not like going to the dentist, something else you probably should do before your teeth fall out. But all that's just common sense. And that is getting real about life. Instead of living in that cocoon, your cocoon, it's never going to happen to me. Be realistic. That doesn't mean you have to be morbid, doesn't mean you have to be negative, Nelly. Just be real and think about that impact on your entire family. Right. Exactly. Yeah. There you go. Well, as far as medicine goes, AI is going to be a big part of the one of the next revolutions in healthcare. One of the most difficult things a doctor has to do is diagnose. And why do a lot of people go to big city doctors? It's not necessarily because the best doctors want to make the most money and live in Chicago, New York, or LA. There's good doctors elsewhere. But big city doctors, especially at the big, the Mayos and the Northwesterns and John Hopkins and fill in the blank, they've seen so many more things. They've got the data. What AI does is give that power to a doctor, whether it's a doctor in Clive, New Mexico, or uh, wherever. They now can input data, and that AI will have the ability to look at things. Still going to take a human to figure things out, but it's going to show that data. Look for this, test for this, whatever that is. For fun, when you go to the doctor now, whether it's you get an X-ray or whatever, or your blood work or an EKG or whatever, you get the report on the My chart. A lot of people have the My chart with their clinics. They're seeing this even sometimes before the doctor sees it. So for fun now, I load it up into AI. I say, acting as a physician, review the following data and give me the results. And I compare that now to what the doctor will then in 48 hours tell me. It's amazing how accurate that AI is. Now, it's still not a doctor, okay? So don't get me wrong. You're not going to, but that's the infancy of AI. That's only going to compound in the years and decades ahead. And that is going to be a diagnostic tool that will benefit every person on this planet, whether you live in the jungles of Africa, whether you're in an igloo in Alaska, or you live in Boston. Your doctor will have so many more resources and can narrow down things to get you a better diagnosis quicker so you can get the appropriate treatment faster. And for so many people, it's timing. Okay. We can cure so many cancers now. We can cure heart issues before someone has that massive heart attack. It's just got to give that doctor the tools and the knowledge ahead of time to, you know what? Your calcium score is this, and we're going to do, oh, you got blocked arteries. We're going to do a triple bypass before the massive heart attack. And that's why being preventative and going to doctors for checkups and all that kind of stuff plays into that. Because if you get the treatment when the problem is more benign, it doesn't, it's less likely to progress. And if you wait till the crisis planning is never necessarily the best plan. It's really exciting in some ways. It's a shame that I'm not 30 years younger to see where all this is headed. Just the changes in the last 20 years, whether it's with medicine, whether it's the ability to see star systems that have never been seen before because they were too far away, but that Hubble telescope is able to, and you can go into almost every field. I know you're an attorney. You can go to AI and say, what are some of the things that I should look at in a basic contract, or review this contract before I talk to the attorney. I'm not saying use it as the attorney, but give it, give yourself some knowledge so you can ask better questions. And whether it's to your doctor or your attorney, a contractor, you know? Uh, it's just amazing, and it's very exciting, a little scary sometimes, but very exciting at the same time. Yeah, that's not that at all what I'm recommending. And one of the things with the My Charts, and there's various versions of them, they are now being shared through various so if you're on vacation and you're in Atlanta and something happens, now they can have better access, and that's going to improve over the years, and it's how you use these tools. I like to use AI to help me ask better questions and to have that baseline of when someone in an area where I'm not as knowledgeable, so I can understand what they're saying so I can ask better questions. And then the reverse, if they're sending me a report, you can go in and put into, simplify this report from this contractor or this doctor or this attorney into more simple terms that I can understand as a layman. And it's that kind of power that and I have no clue at all how it works. It's just amazing, because some of these things you can actually have a conversation with, and that is really scary to me, but also interesting at the same time on how it works, and I'll never know how it works. But with any tool, it's how you utilize that tool for its best advantage. And it's not to debate the lawyer, debate the surgeon, or whatever. It's to better understand because when you're talking to a super educated professional, not all of them are able to translate that knowledge in a way best for whoever they're talking to can understand. Okay. Because they spent God knows how many years in college and postgraduate work and all that, and, you know, you can't be a doctor, lawyer, or Indian chief without having knowledge, right? Be intelligent. Although, well, they do call the person that graduated last in the medical school doctor, but nonetheless, they still passed, so they still have a better knowledge than the rest of us. So I think it helps make communication easier, and in some cases, even language. I'll get I'm looking up something that is in another language, I can throw it in there, translate it. It's a pretty good translation. It's not perfect right now. It's just amazing. It is amazing what is happening on every front and the power that can have to help the individual be better prepared for all aspects of life. And in every aspect of life, if you're better prepared and avoid crises, those bumps in the road are better managed. A blow up. You don't want to be sitting there trying to immediately make decisions, for example, for an older parent with no knowledge, no time to think about it, and no previous conversation. Well, what did mom say? Did she ever say she wanted to, no one talked about it. Heck, people don't even talk about their final wishes often. Have that conversation. Just talk. Make it fun. Make it a game. Do whatever it takes to have that conversation, and there'll be better results down the road for. Easiest way is go to radioltc.com, so you don't have to sit there, "How does he spell McCann LTC?" You just go radioltc.com. My previous life was in radio, so and when I do interviews or podcasts, it's easier to remember radioltc.com. Likewise. That sounds like a great plan. Cameron, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it.